This is CNN 10 minutes of world news explained. I'm Carl Azus, and leading things off this Wednesday, January 18th, a mystery, one of the biggest in the history of aviation, may go unsolved. The underwater search for Malaysia Airlines Flight 370 has been called off. On March 8, 2014, the flight left Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, and headed for Beijing, China. It had 239 people on board. At some point during the journey, military radar indicated that the plane changed course and headed west. Investigators believe it eventually turned south toward the southern Indian Ocean. After that, the trail went cold. A few pieces of the plane have washed up on islands near the east coast of Africa. But despite years of searching 46,000 square miles and spending millions of dollars, no one knows what happened to the plane. Its black box, its flight data recorder, may hold some answers, but it's missing with the flight. And Malaysia, China, and Australia, the three countries leading the search, announced yesterday they were suspending it. They said the decision was not made lightly or without sadness, but a group that represents family members of the flight's passengers says stopping at this stage is nothing short of irresponsible.
Following a plane crash, the search for survivors always comes first. But just as important is the search for answers, the why and the how. Often those answers are found in the black box. Since the 60s, all commercial airplanes have been required to have one on board. Now, the name is a little misleading because they're actually orange. And when we're talking about a black box, we're talking about two different boxes, one being the cockpit voice recorder, the other being the flight data recorder. Together, they weigh anywhere between 20 to 30 pounds, and they have to be crash-proof. Black boxes can survive just about anything. Temperatures up to 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit for an hour. Forces that are 3,400 Gs. Now, that's 3,400 times the force of gravity. They're waterproof, and they can save recorded data for 2 years. And it's a lot of data. The cockpit voice recorder records the crew's conversation and background noise. By listening to the ambient sounds in a cockpit before a crash, experts can determine if a stall took place, the RPMs of the engine, and the speed at which the plane was traveling. When these sounds are cross-referenced with ground control conversations, they can even help searchers locate a crash site. Then there's the flight data recorder. It gathers 25 hours of technical data from airplane sensors, recording several thousand discrete pieces of information. Data about the airspeed, altitude, pitch, acceleration, roll, fuel, and the list goes on and on. But to make sense of the data, first you have to find it. Not an easy thing to do when a plane crashes into the ocean. Both black box components are outfitted with underwater locator beacons, which self-activate the moment they come into contact with water. They send pings once per second to signal their location and can transmit data from as deep as 20,000 feet for up to 30 days, when their batteries then run out. But on land, there's no such pinging to help guide the search. Investigators have to sift through the wreckage until they find it.
Up next, it's a force of 4,000 U.S. troops plus 2,400 pieces of military equipment, including tanks, artillery, and armored trucks. It's all part of a deployment lasting 9 months, and it's moving throughout Eastern Europe on training exercises. The Americans who recently arrived in Poland received a welcome ceremony and a greeting from the country's prime minister. A commander of the U.S. land forces in Europe says their presence was a concrete sign of the continued U.S. commitment to the defense of Poland and the NATO alliance. But Russia said it saw the deployment as a threat, an action that threatens Russian interests and security. Here's why there's tension over this.
The one thing you need to know about U.S. troop deployment across Europe is the word collective defense. Let's take this example. Say Russian tanks crossed the border and invaded Latvia. Well, then it would be U.S. soldiers that rush to the front line in Latvia's defense. Now, that's the basis of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, or NATO, an alliance of 28 countries guaranteeing the region's security. An attack on one is an attack on all. But the United States has by far the most powerful military in the alliance. Now, NATO was formed in 1949, just after World War II, in order to contain the Soviet Union. But in 1991, the USSR collapsed. In the next decade or so, NATO grew to include some of those former Soviet states. Then in 2014, Russian forces entered Ukraine, seizing the Crimean Peninsula, a violation of international law. Now, Ukraine is not a member of NATO, so the United States and other NATO allies did not mobilize troops to defend Ukraine. But many of Ukraine's neighbors are members of NATO. Poland, Estonia, and Latvia are just some of the NATO allies that have called for more troops to come to their defense. And this is why we see thousands of U.S. troops now deployed across Eastern Europe to create a strong deterrent against any further Russian aggression.
10-second trivia. Which U.S. president gave the shortest inaugural address? George Washington, William Henry Harrison, Abraham Lincoln, or Franklin Delano Roosevelt? Delivered in 1793, George Washington's second inaugural address was the shortest ever at 135 words, just 2 paragraphs. 224 years later, a presidential inauguration is a massive event, no matter how short or long the speech might be. The price tag can ring up at $200 million. That's not just this year's event. That's what inaugurations can typically cost in the 21st century. According to the Washington Post, both parties, Democrats and Republicans, tend to spend the same amount for inaugurations. Private donations can cover $70 million of the cost, give or take. The rest comes from taxpayers. And the money goes to everything from security, the biggest expense, to the swearing-in ceremony, the parade, the parties, and the inaugural ball.
I, George Herbert Walker Bush,
do solemnly swear that I will faithfully execute the office of President of the United States.
The only thing we have to fear is fear itself.
Do whatever needs to be done to preserve this last and greatest bastion of freedom.
Ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country.
Thank you for a president who knows you and seeks you through Scripture.
There's a quick, easy, and free way to find out in advance what's coming up on CNN 10. It's by signing up for our daily email. From our homepage, all you got to do is click on Sign Up for Daily Emails. Enter your email address, your first name, your state. That's it. The night before each day's show, you'll get a quick summary of our major stories sent right to your inbox. For 10 out of 10 today, you'd expect to see a polar bear playing in the snow, so no surprises here. But when you see an Asian elephant doing the same thing, you know something's up. This ain't the Arctic, it's the Oregon Zoo. It shut down one day last week for an unusually strong snowstorm, but some of the animals look like they loved it. They took advantage of a snow day to play, like kids on a day off from school. Of course, the polar animals could bear it. As far as complaints went, the marine mammal's lips were sealed, and it didn't seem like it bothered the elephant's pachydermis. So even if snow wasn't part of their natural habitat, it wasn't zoo cold for them to luxuriate in near blizzard conditions. I'm Carl Azuz for CNN 10.